Hey guys, this is going to be another tutorial, and this one's going to be on precision alignment. It's a add-on that makes things quite a bit easier to get into position, but it itself is fairly in-depth. So most people, when they first see it, they don't really understand. It's not very intuitive until you start understanding the idea of the three constructs, I think they called them. Anyway, so we'll grab the precision. Well, first, let me just demonstrate why you need precision alignment. And why you need it is you really can't get things extremely exact. I mean, you can get things definitely close, but the exactness that some people need is not doable with normal tools. So say we get what a lot of people probably know about is precision. I'll use the move. They'll use that in conjunction with the smart snap. So say I precision this over here. Whoops. It's been so long since I used it. I forgot it had that rotate function. And that'll work. You know, you see that, and it's got no seam. It works really well. But what happens if you don't want it to be flush like that? You want it to be like that. Well, precision won't work very well. You see why that doesn't work? Because it deals with the face, the angle of the face, called the normal of that face. Precision alignment has nothing to do with that. I mean, you can, but instead of using that face's angle to determine how it'll orient on the second click, precision alignment will just move where you first click to where you second click, and it'll move it directly, so it doesn't change the orientation here. So I'm just going to do it real quick, and you'll get what I'm saying, and I'm going to use this setting here. And also, it doesn't use the smart snap positions. It has its own snapping system, which is a heck of a lot more precise. So I'm going to right click there. I'm also going to select it, which makes it turn blue, and select there. You see how that line there? If you see, that line is at the very edge of that prop, and the very edge there. So what's going to happen here is it's going to go from that position to that position by clicking this. And as you can see, it is perfectly lined up and still at that 45-degree angle. So that's what precision alignment will do. I mean, that's one of the many things it can do. That's one of the more useful and probably the more used things it does, is just getting things where they need to be. So let's start breaking it down. First thing I should probably show you is just this interface. I'm just holding C. If you don't know what this is, it's just called the context menu, and you hold C and it pulls up just the tool. We'll just go over these first things up here. The first thing I'm going to do, though, is just go over the top of these three different things: the point, line, and plane. Now, a point is exactly what it sounds like. I'm going to turn down the... It's just a single point in space. So you can see it as that red cross. Hopefully you can see it pretty well. I know that YouTube will compress things to the point where it's hard to see. If I hold still for a second, your image should stabilize it. And anyway, so that red point is just a single point in space. Alright, now just keep that in mind. Now the line, I'm actually going to use this one because it's a little easier to just do. If I just click, you see that line? You should see a blue line that connects from the prop clear across to the other side of my screen. And it comes all the way out here. Now, again, it's just a line in 3D space. The only difference between a point and a line is the point is one singular spot. A line technically goes forever. So you can see it by the representation of the blue line, but realistically it goes forever. The reason why it has a start and end here is that's the start and end of the defined line. So that's the line you will be dealing with as far as movements and things go. So there's a line. Now the plane, I'm just going to do it on this one. The plane looks a little odd, and this is what usually throws people off. If you notice these two over here, they have this green line, and that just all that means is that this point is going to stay with this prop that it's pointing to with that green line. So if I move this, these stay with it. That's just telling you what it's attached to, what prop it's attached to. The line has the plane has that as well. It's that little tiny line right there. But what's this line coming out? That is the upward face of this this plane. Now, if you kind of got what was going on here, that's a point, that's a line, so that's one spot. That's technically two spots. Imagine this one is three or more. It's a flat plane. Imagine it like, you see that square there? Imagine that being a piece of paper. That defines that plane. If you understand the word plane, you probably get what I'm talking about when I say that's the flat plane. I don't really know how to explain it other than that. It's just in this, like, it's like a 2D existence of a singular plane that goes up and down and then sideways in that same plane, but does not go this direction. Okay? So that line right there just represents what in a lot of I don't even know what you'd call it. I guess 3D space terms. It's hit normal. So that means it's 90-degree offset from its actual orientation out. So this is, the plane exists in this direction, and the top of its face, or top of the plane, is that direction. So that's why that green line points out. This one can get confusing. If you don't understand what I'm saying here, just play with it, and maybe watching more of this tutorial you'll maybe start to understand. Okay, so that's the three different constructs, or whatever the guy that created this calls them. A point, a line, and a plane. These three things here have to do with everything else in this add-on. So if you don't have any of these set down, you can't do anything else. Okay? And then what the different things here are, let's go ahead and I'm going to delete all these real quick. The different things here are point, hit, pause. That just means wherever you click, that's where it's going to click. That's where it's going to go. It's the hit position of your click. Coordinate center. Actually, I don't think I've ever even used coordinate center. Okay, so it looks like it's the same idea as these two. So really these three are almost the exact same thing. I'm not entirely sure what coordinate center means. Maybe the hitbox of it? Like this boundary box. I don't know. But again, these all do about the same thing. This one's a little easier to talk about. Mass center, so the very center of this prop's mass is where that point will be. As you can see, it's like right in the middle of it. Let me get a different prop to kind of show you. Now, just because this prop's hollow doesn't mean the center of mass isn't going to be in the middle. If you understand physics, just a little bit of a physics, you'll know that the center of mass can be on the inside of a hollow object. So you see there. So that center of mass is right there in the middle of that. And so that's kind of the same thing as these other two. Now the bounding box I don't ever really use because it's defined. So say, okay, I can't even think of a prop except for something random. Like maybe a chair. If you see how Smart Snap, that grid, is showing up as a full square, but this chair is definitely not a square, that's kind of the bounding box. It's also referred to as a hitbox. It's similar to the physics box, but it's just the way that the game deals with certain things. So like if a player's looking at something or if a bullet's hitting it or whatnot. Bounding box is similar. I think it has to do with the exact same as the physics box, but I don't know, don't quote me on it. That's why I don't use it. I use mass center more. It's more useful. So apparently this chair's bounding box is there. Now let's see if the mass, or the center, or the point of the bounding box center. Let's see if the mass is different. And it is. You see how there's two different points there? And you'll notice this is also something I could start to explain a little bit here. You have 2 points here now. You have point 1 and point 2. It's a little hard to tell on this chair, but each point will have its own label. And again, I understand that if you're not watching this in HD, you might not be able to see those, but if you're playing, you can see them. Actually, isn't there I think I could actually probably turn those up. I think there's a setting for it. Display options. I don't remember. Draw size? No, that doesn't even change the actual... I don't know, anyway. So, 1 and 2. So there's two different things there. Anyway, get back to where I was getting at there. Is the bounding box and the mass are in two different positions. So you gotta remember that when it comes to these three. If someone understands what coordinate center would mean, drop it down in the comments, because even I don't know that. Anyway, moving on. So that's all the different types of points. Now lines. This is the one I used, and this is just hit, pause, hit, normal. So if you remember what I was talking about, hit normal, it's the perpendicular line, or it's a perpendicular direction from the face that you're clicking. So the perpendicular, or the hit normal of this face here is going to be out that direction. So if I just click, it's a hit position plus hit normal. So it's going to be the position I click with the hit normal of that face. So it's going to be out there in that direction. Pretty simple. Hit normal, we'll just go ahead and show this one. Instead of changing the position of it, it's just going to change the normal of the line. So if I click here, nothing happens because it's already got that normal. But if I click here, and there's a glitch, I don't know if it does it for everyone, but it definitely does it for me. If that endpoint is like in a weird spot, you see how that line is going off in a really weird direction? But when I look at it normally, it's in a different direction, so I don't know. I'll try to talk about it too much if it's not in view correctly, but anyway. So once I click on the side there, the hit normal changes, and now it's pointing that direction because that face there, the hit normal of that face is that direction. So if I do here, it flips around. Or if I do even the ground, goes up, or this building goes that same direction we started with. So it comes down to the face's direction, or if I click here, obviously it goes that direction. Anyway, this is the line I use the most. It's just start, end. You saw me use it when I was first demonstrating what this does. Instead of precision alignment dealing with the hit normal of where you click, you actually just define where the line is. So say I want to go from here, which is already where the start is. Well, actually, let's just completely start over here. If I want to start here in the middle, I'll just click, and then nothing happens because I have to click the place the endpoint, and something that comes somewhere else. I'm going to hold Alt and then click, and now the line is created. And you see that line is created between those 2 points of where I clicked, and that is the start and end. Really, really easy. This is what I use to move most objects. So that's line, got point, line, and now this one's fairly self-explanatory by this point. That's the plane with a hit normal, so it's hit pause, hit normal. It's where I clicked and the face is normal, and then just hit normal changes the normal of that plane. Okay, and this might get to showing you a little bit more of what I mean by what a plane is. Alright, so that's all those. Now you understand all those. And understanding those is really most of the battle right there. So we'll just head on down. Most of these are all pretty easy to explain, so this will go by fast. I mean, do I really need to explain that? This just toggles it on and off so you can see them. Snap to edges just means, let's go ahead and get the hit position again. If I didn't have this on and I was trying to get to the very edge of this prop, it wouldn't snap to the edge of the prop. Like I was saying earlier, how this precision alignment has its own snapping system, like, you know, like Smart Snap. Same with snap to center lines. So if I didn't have either of these two clicked, see how it didn't snap? But if I have edge clicked, it snapped to the edge. But if I have edge and center ticked, edge and center. So it helps you be a little bit more precise. Now snap sensitivity, this is just how far away that it'll look for the edge or center of the prop. So if you set this down to virtually nothing, it'll pretty much never snap unless you're extremely close. Even that you might not even be able to tell. If you set this high, even if I was to click way up here, or well, I mean, I guess it's kind of hard to demonstrate on this prop, so but it'll always find the a center point and edge, unless there is no edge, and that's just center point. The higher it is. So anyway, that's that. And then these are all fairly easy. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that because this has move. Okay, well, we'll just go over it real quick. Alright, point. Really what you have selected is just what point you're dealing with. So if you noticed, I clicked, or excuse me, if I have nothing there, there's no green point. If I click, there is a point. So I'm dealing with the point I have selected. So if I click 3, and then click again, I created point 3. And it goes all the way up to 9. Pretty self-explanatory. The reason why there's 2 points here is it will deal with how move works, but I'll get to that here in a moment. View will just snap your view to it. So if I click that and I click view, see how it snapped my view to it? Pretty nice when you have tons of stuff and don't remember what's what. Attach would mean, well, first I guess I'll just say, when you right click with precision alignment, it highlights a prop. You can only highlight one prop at a time, and right click in the ground will highlight nothing. So when you have a prop highlighted and you have a point, line, or plane selected and you hit attach on either one of those, you'll see that that point is now attached to this prop. It attaches it to whatever prop you have selected, which can be useful because maybe you don't want that point to be associated with this as far as movement goes. You want to keep it with this one. Okay. Delete and delete all, that's pretty self-explanatory. That just deletes them. You've seen me do that a few times now. Okay, now move entity. You can only move between line and plane, or excuse me, line and point. Plane you can't because it's not defined in that kind of way. Like it's just there's no way to move between two planes. not enough information for it to work that way. I generally always use line to move because for me it's easier to understand in my head. With points, it confuses me. But what happens if you have one prop selected and say we have a point there, and then I'm going to click over here, but I'm also going to hold shift so it'll make a second point instead of removing this first point. So it'll, you'll have two of them now. So if I have a prop selected, two different points, actually I'm going to want this one selected. The normal way it'll work is, you see how it's staggered these selections? You would think that it would have both points selected, but it actually, I don't even know if, whoops. Yeah, this one will just stay selecting to one. But this one will continue to move down with how many points you have. So just remember, if you're going to move things, you got to remember that this is going to be the second condition. Okay. Now, what this move does, it's going to move whatever prop you have selected from this point to this point. Okay. So what that means is this prop is going to go from here to here, and the reason why it's going from the orientation and position, well, I guess orientation not so much, the position of this point to here. Now that doesn't necessarily mean the point has to be on this prop. It's just that that orientation. I guess I'd just be easier to show you. I can't really explain it. So if I click Move Entity, it went from here to here. And now, it's hard, and again, I know YouTube, it's hard to see, but the 2 and the 1 are now together because Precision precisely moved those 2 points to be exactly in the same spot. So you can see that those two props are in the exact same spot as far as those points were concerned. Now, this is what people get confused. I just press Z and it can undo that. As I was just saying, you don't have to have this point selected on that prop. I could put this point here. And this is where it confuses people, because this prop is going to be moved from this point to here. So that means this prop is not going to end up in here just like it was before. It's going to be up here a little bit, because relative to that point, look where that prop is. That prop is up here. So if I just do it real quick, Move Entity, you see how it's up there? That point now is right there, and that prop is up here. So the orientation of where that point is compared to the prop you're moving is very important. Okay? So say if I have it here, like on the edge, what do you think is going to happen? That edge is going to be coming right in the middle of this prop, because that's where that prop or that point is versus that point. Just like that. Okay? That's what confuses most people. They don't understand that idea. And that's also what makes this so powerful. Because say I want to move this prop. Actually, let's just go ahead and say I want to move this prop from this position to over here by its exactly the exact width this is. All I have to do, delete all real quick. Reselect my tool. I'm going to click, Shift, click, hold C, Move Entity. Oh, I went the wrong direction. This is why I don't use points, because I always do it backward. But it moved from point 2 to point 1. So it moved exactly its own width, because that's where I clicked. That in itself is really powerful. But also, the fact that you can hold Shift and do the Move Entity again. Entity. You see what it did? It cloned and then moved. And then also, a quick way of doing that, if you hold Shift and then right-click the prop, it'll do the exact same movement you just did. So it's not going to act like you click this. It's just going to do the exact same thing it just did. Okay? So that means if I move this down here and then rotate it this direction, what do you think is going to happen if I just shift right click? It's not going to go that way. It's going to go this way, because that's what that movement just was. It was a movement between that spot to that spot, not from this spot to over there. You know what I mean? Okay. And again, that's another thing that confuses people. You can see why I'm going so slow, because this can get pretty confusing pretty fast, as it is not super intuitive, but at the same time it is. Like, it's just not like any other tool, and that's why it makes it so powerful. Is the guy that made this really thought about how things should move in 3D space the right way, you know. So anyway, so that was points. Again, I don't like using points because I always do that. I always get it backward. I meant to have it go that direction, not that direction. So I'll just show you the way I do it. And I use the start end. Oops, delete all. So if with the start end, the first click is going to be where it starts, and the second click, while holding Alt, is going to be where it ends up. So it will go that direction now. And then I hit Move Entity. Okay. The only downside with line is a lot of times it doesn't stay attached. So you just have to tell it to attach if you want to keep it with that prep. But yeah. Okay. Pretty cool. Alright, and so that's just a move. These two here are the most commonly used. That's why they're here and not in this next menu I'm going to show you that you have already seen because I was pulling it up. These are the simplest things you can do. The next thing is the meat and potatoes. You press R and it pulls this up. This is a precision alignment manipulation panel, as it says here. This will probably be pretty daunting when you first look at it, but honestly it's not that bad. If you just kind of look at things and read, if you understand simple logic, you can understand what most of this all will do. This first page just has to do with the mod itself, how it looks, basically. It's no point of really going over any of that. But then you have points, lines, planes. So those three same things we were just dealing with. You can adjust various things about those points, lines, and planes. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because honestly, if I went over each one of these and every single thing in each one of these, this tutorial is going to be 100 times longer than it already is going to be. And so yeah. But I'm going to go over just a few things real quick. Lines are a really good way to demonstrate this. Oh, I already got a line there. So I got a line, and you can see it here. But if I click this, and you look here, all these are 0. Okay. What that means is, the start point X, Y, and Z are not at 0. It's because this line hasn't been loaded into these settings yet. You have to double click. And now it's loaded in. That's where all that is, okay? So if I was to change one of these things, let's change the length because it's a really simple one to do. It went from 49 to 100 or whatever I'm changing it to. You're 191, okay? Once I do that, I have to hit update. Okay? And what that does is when you do something in one of these categories, oops, like I just did there. Actually, I'm just going to undo that because I don't even know what that did. When you do something in one of these categories here, it's going to actually change one of the other categories most of the time. So if you hit update, something should have changed here. I didn't see it though. One of these things changed. So you got to make sure if you do something here, click update. And then click set. If you notice, that line went from here all the way out to here now. Okay? So you can change where you want the line to be, even more precisely. Usually, I don't really ever mess with any of these, except for like length. Length is a good thing to mess with. Okay? And that's just the line adjustment part. Now line functions, there's a lot of functions in this, do things for you. Like they're smart, just simple things with math and whatnot. So you got to do the same thing. You click it once, and then, I mean, sorry, I'm confusing you part there. You just click it. You don't need to double click it like you do up here, obviously, because it's not loading information. Anyway, just highlight your line, the line that you want to manipulate, and you can do things like reverse direction. See what that did there? It messed with all the settings up here, but it didn't actually affect the line yet. The start is still over here and end is still over here. Oh, and that's just probably something I need to go into. With the line, there's an X at the start and there's 2 dashes at the end. And you probably cannot see that in the video. So you'll just have to mess with it and see for yourself. Anyway, so I did reverse direction and it updated some stuff here, and then you have to click set. You see how that line went from going this direction to now this direction. Okay? So all these will do different things like that. And again, you just read it and you'll figure out what that means. So, and you can also hover over it and it'll give you a little tooltip. So this one's something I use a lot. Switch start and end. Hit updated, set. So now the start's over here, ends over here, versus how it would, vice versa of how it was. Okay? So that's lines. That's the easiest way to explain how that works. So you should kind of understand the idea behind all the other ones now, these other two, because they're all pretty much the same thing. They're just manipulating the lines. Okay? So move constructs. Honestly, I don't ever use it. It's not really all that useful for me as far as... You probably have something you can do with it, but myself, I don't use these because functions work a lot better. So all this is you just select a couple of things and you can move them. So anyway, functions is what the meat and potatoes are, though. So say like... so we have that line that starts here and ends here. Well, maybe we want that line, the start of the line, to be up here or something. And we could just click, but because the way a lot of things interact with this add-on, you may not be able to click. Maybe the point is out in the middle of space somewhere and you can't click on it. What you can do, let's just go ahead and make a point real quick. I'm going to unattach this point by just clicking attach. It's a toggle. You see now this point, like I said, is out in the middle of nowhere, so you can't just click, to get that line to start there. This is where the functions come in. Click R. Then I'm going to go to the line. So if you notice, there's a color coordination with all these: red, blue, green. These are obviously points, lines, planes. I'm going to the lines. I'm going to click start point from point. What that's going to do is I'm going to select my line and my point. So line 1, point 1. And it's going to make the line's start point from this point. Then I just click set. See that? Move that line from being way over here, the start from way over here, up to where that point was. Very powerful. You can do a lot with just simple things like that, with all these different things. Some of these are a little bit more complicated and probably need a little bit more explanation, but I'm just going to go over a couple of them real quick. Just mess with things, and again, holding... I guess there's no tooltips for these. Oh, well, anyway. I'm going to go over this one real quick. This one is very useful, but it's not exactly the easiest to understand. So let me just set this up real quick. Say you have this prop, and you want that prop to be exactly on the floor, but you don't want to just like drop it for various reasons. Maybe it's attached to a bunch of other props or something. What you can do is we're going to mess with those functions. I'm just going to grab a line. I'm going to click. And in fact, I'm going to shorten that line because I want to demonstrate something else here. Oh, it's what I get for not double clicking. Okay, there's a line. I'm going to get a plane. I'm going to put the plane right on the floor. Okay, and if you don't click on a prop or something, it gives you that error, precision alignment error, no valid entity selected. It just means that it's not going to be attached to anything because you click the world. It can't attach to the world. Alright, so like I said, the problem is we want to get this prop all the way down to the ground exactly, so that this face is directly into the same as the floor itself. Well, how would you do that? How would you... I mean, you could sit there and get the line and like measure the distance and whatnot, but you're not going to be able to figure that out very easily. I don't think you could even honestly do it. The way that this function that I'm showing you works is... I'll just go to the function real quick and I'm just going to do it. It's called line plane intersection. If I click a point, so if there's nothing, there's no actual point available, you just click one, it'll make a point there. And then select your line that you want to use and your plane you want to use. And then hit set. And what that's going to do, it's going to put a point at the exact spot that this line hits this plane. And remember, lines go forever. So just because this line technically stops here, that's just, that's a technicality. That has to do with movement. But that line technically goes forever. Same with this plane. This plane isn't a small square like that. It technically goes forever. So just because these aren't physically, you can't see them actually looking like they would hit each other, they will. So if we hit that function, hit set, we now have a point. And that point is exactly from where that line would hit this plane. Okay? So now all we have to do is use another function. It's the same function I just showed you, except for endpoint instead of start point. So endpoint from point. We already have our line and our plane, or our line and our point selected. Hit set. And now our line ends right there. So all we have to do is go to our line, move entity. So now that prop is exactly on the floor. You can't even hardly do that with actual physics most of the time. Because the way physics work with the Havoc engine, it makes things bounce and things. So, I mean, it's exactly precise. Okay? I know this video is probably getting pretty damn long, so I'm just going to show you a couple other things, but I'm going to go through them kind of fast. Let's go through rotation real quick. This is one thing that one of my friends was saying I should make sure to specify in here because people don't understand it very easily. Rotation. Just like that. Easiest way to do rotation, like you're going to rotate a prop around something. If you put a line somewhere, and then come to rotate around axis, select that line, give it a rotation amount, so let's do 45 degrees, and then click rotate entity. You can see it rotated, but it rotated relative to that line. So if I have that line there, whoops, I didn't use the right one, then what's it going to do? It's not going to spin in place, it's going to spin at that point, so it's going to rotate around that point. Like that. Okay? What if I keep doing it? I'll keep rotating. And remember, if I hold shift and do a movement, it'll clone it. Okay? Pretty easy. And then obviously the hit position, or hit normal, excuse me, of the line matters. So if I have it like that and I try rotating, see how it rotated all weird? Okay, so remember that the line's orientation matters. Anyway, so that's rotation. You can select any number you want here from 0 to 360. 360 would be redundant, 0 would be redundant, anything in between makes sense. And then if you go to move something and it goes the opposite direction you want, you can just hit negative and it'll flip it. Really easy. Okay? And then the one last thing I want to show you is mirror. Okay? This is one of the most powerful functions in this, is by my opinion. because you can make really, really complicated builds, but make sure it's mirrored perfectly to the other side. All right. So what you do is you grab let's go ahead and delete everything. Just get this all cleaned up. We're going to grab a plane, slap it on there, but we're going to change its orientation to be like that. So that way, what the plane is effectively doing is cutting your build in half and mirroring everything on from one side to the other. Okay, so you got to make sure that this plane indicates that you're cutting your build directly in half. So say if this was a car or something, you want that to be right smack in the middle of the car, right in between the seats, right in between, the transmission and engine, right in the middle. So that way when it mirrors things, it mirrors them proportionally to that point. Okay, so I'm going to select a prop. I got my plane oriented correctly. I'm going to do mirror across plane. I'm going to select my plane, and then remember holding shift, rotate entity. Okay, see what that did? That it just mirrored that prop over to here. This is one thing I also want to tell you. When you do rotations like a mirror, it's taking the original prop, moving it, and then cloning that prop in the exact same old position. So really this is the same prop and this is a new one. Okay, so you got to keep that in mind. If you're using precision, don't weld anything until after you're done with precision. Okay, and now remember, if you hold shift and right click on a prop, it'll do the exact same thing. So now I can effectively mirror this whole thing in a few seconds. Bam. Okay, so precision alignment, it's an extremely powerful tool. There are a lot of things you can do with it. I have, I'm just going to show you because I'm proud of it anyway. Actually, I don't know. Anyway, there's a lot you can do with it. Like the amount of situations I've gotten into and thought, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm going to get a prop into that position exactly how it should be. And been flabbergasted because I realized you can, because of the different functions and things you can do here. Is crazy. Like I can get props to be any orientation, any position you can think of. Okay, it just takes problem solving at that point. And the more you play with these, the more you look at things, read things, and start to understand. And like say with this rotation function, it even explains what it does. You'll start to figure out more and more you can do with this add-on. It is one of my favorite. I even get to the point where I'm oh shoot, I didn't go over constraints. I'll go over that in just a second. But I find that when I'm on a server and someone needs help with like getting a prop there, I'm almost gladly able to, or go up there and do it, because this prop is so useful and it makes their jaw drop how precise you can get stuff to be. So anyway, so let's go over constraints real quick. Just like in regular, tools and whatnot, you can use an axis, ball socket, advanced ball socket, elastic, rope, slider, hydraulic. But this basically makes it so you can do exactly where you need it to be. So you can define it by 2 points or a axis, or ball socket between 2 points, or advanced ball socket, or elastic, or rope, or slider. You get the idea. All you have to do is select the two things and then create constraint. Real easy. It's pretty useful. But one thing about the wire hydraulic, as it says in here, if you right click the hydraulic, if you know anything about wire, if you right click the hydraulic controller, you can redefine the points of that hydraulic, which is again very, very useful. You can even have, okay, let's just go over one of these real quick. Say you have these two props and you get, say, your rope tool. Oh, apparently I had my thing was it. Oh yeah, I was making a line earlier. Let's do 5. You have a couple of spots there. Let's actually make it rigid. But what if you want it to be roped there, but you don't want it to be roped in that orientation, like where you have to click it? What if you wanted it to be roped out here somewhere? But how do you do that? Like that boggles your mind. And when I first saw someone do this, it blew my mind, the possibilities that what you can do. So let's go and remove that rope. Go back to precision alignment. And let's grab a couple of positions. Delete that. So there's 2 points. And then all we have to do is select point 1 to point 2. And settings are all fine how they are. Create constraint. Okay? So it does the exact same thing. But what we can do is, let's remove that. Let's put point 2 out here, but still have it attached to this prop. So if we do that same thing, it makes the line down here. But because this point is still attached to this prop, this constraint is still attached. Crazy, right? Like the amount of things you can do with this, it visually makes things look better. It you can make things so much more mechanically sound this way. Like like I said, when I realized how many things I could do with this dang add-on, it like opened up many worlds for me. So anyway, I know this tutorial was long. Thank you for sticking out to the end. Hopefully you learned a lot and you can, start making some awesome builds. And yeah, enjoy and see ya later.